Hey guys, this is EXMaster of The Final Shot, and this time G Black and I have decided to team up and do a double feature covering two shooting games that on the surface appear only to be loosely related, but actually share a deeper common lineage and development team. Those two games I'm referring to are titles Gun Frontier, or Gun and Frontier as it is known internationally, but I'll stick with calling it Gun Frontier, released in 1990, and the follow-up Metal Black, released in 1991. So G Black will be covering Metal Black in his video released around the same time as this one, which shows his replay and offer insights about the game from his commentary, and I encourage you to also check out that video at some point as a companion to this. Gun Frontier is a vertical scrolling shooter with a stylistic gimmick where many of the aircraft, including the player ship, resemble giant guns, specifically pistols and handguns of the Old West aesthetic. It takes place in a distant future where humanity has advanced space travel enough to immigrate to new worlds. One of those worlds being the planet Gloria, the setting of this game. Large quantities of gold are discovered on Gloria, which attract many new human settlers. But as a byproduct of the large cost of immigrating to Gloria, many who make the trip end up impoverished and live a life resembling that of the America Gold Rush of the 1800s, justifying that Old West aesthetic. Unfortunately for the settlers, the gold deposits of Gloria attract another alien race of settlers, the Wild Lizards. And yes, they are actually humanoid lizard people. The Wild Lizards wreak havoc on the Glorian humans, killing many and enslaving those who survive. It's up to the player to take their airship and drive the Wild Lizards out of Gloria. I'll confess, when I first caught wind of this game and played it, I actually didn't think much of it. On the surface, it comes off as a pretty plain vertical shmup, especially in the context in which it was released, where arcade shooters were still at the height of their popularity and a dime a dozen, at least until the release of Street Fighter II shortly afterward, which kicked off the arcade fighting game craze. So it didn't really stand out to me from that first impression. But over time I noticed the game seemed to have a cult following, despite its modest origins. On the internet I kept coming across tidbits about it from enthusiasts and even people in the industry that cite it as a favorite of theirs. Perhaps most notably the main programmer of the much beloved shooter, Battle Garega, that came out a few years later, is often cited as being a fan of Gun Frontier, and using that as an inspiration during the development of Garega. If you play both games, this becomes very apparent in some of Garega's style and game mechanic choices. Fast forward to today, and after playing it several times from that start, I too ended up becoming fond of Gun Frontier. I think the appeal of this game ultimately comes from looking under that surface. It's the little things, the details, that make it stand out. The sprite work and animation show signs of painstaking effort and an attention to detail. For example, in that waterfall scene at the end of Stage 2, which is impressive work, and even more so at the time it was released. Or that sudden movie screen that appears when you destroy the theater in Stage 4, and plays a random fun little movie in the midst of all that carnage that you'll probably barely pay attention to while playing, but it's nice to acknowledge after the fact. The soundtrack is excellent, and appropriately fits the Wild West setting of this game. And the gameplay, while difficult, gives you a generous opportunity to recover from death, unlike most arcade shmups from that area. There are checkpoints, but you only have a relatively modest penalty applied to the power of your weapon, so you aren't left with an ineffective low-level gun to try to re-attempt a difficult section, and it's fairly easy to recover to the state it was in before. Your screen-clearing bombs remain untouched upon dying, and if you have none left, the game mercifully gives you a partial bomb stock to potentially help you recover. Because of this, I think I would recommend this game as a gateway to more challenging shmups. If you don't quite have the stomach for insane bullet hell salads, but you can clear a few easier shmups without too much trouble, and you're looking to step it up some. So before I talk more about the replay itself, let me insert this general footnote about an important mechanic of this game. Gun Frontier has a rank system. I won't go into too much detail about how it works. You can search on the internet to find material about it if you're curious. But basically, your fire rate is a major contributor to making the game prematurely difficult, so auto-fire is discouraged. Firing rate is measured by the frequency of shots from counting frames. So I played this game with two buttons. one with a lower frequency firing shot to keep the rank difficulty from triggering, and one with a high frequency rapid fire shot that I primarily use to take out larger and more durable enemies. Choosing not to use auto fire entirely makes this game, in my opinion, substantially more difficult than it already is. In fact, the Arcade Archive's release of Gun Frontier, which is the source of this replay, has configuration options built into the buttons, which lets you adjust the shot frequency, since it's such a common way to play. At a certain point in the game, the difficulty adjusts enough where the rapid firing doesn't matter as much anymore, so you see me use it more liberally eventually. Having said that, the first two stages aren't too bad. Mainly there to get your feet wet, and after a little practice, I was able to fairly consistently get through them without making any mistakes. The third stage is when things start to pick up a bit. There's these blue enemies that get introduced that like to circle around and catch you by shooting on your flank or on your rear, so it took some practice to get used to their patterns. One trick that helped me is to stay at the bottom of the screen in order to lure them into clipping off the screen if any try to circle around you. The beginning of stage 4 can be pretty tricky due to a section I like to call the Death Corridor, when you go through the main road of a seemingly abandoned town. It's a section where various foes will converge on you in a way to make things seem tight, such as the tanks that burst out of hiding from buildings on the side and spray fire at you, the explosive crossbow armed vehicle that tracks you in the center, and the smaller enemies homing in on you while all this is going on. But once you get through that, the second half of the stage isn't as bad as long as you memorize the appearance of some sudden large enemies. Naturally I say that, and this is the section where I actually made my first mistake. Go figure. And then we get to stage 5, and stage 5 is where one credit clears go to die. When you begin this stage below you, you will see huge formation of wild lizard ships mobilizing for the likely purpose of taking you out the sky. And boy, do they live up to that ominous first impression, because this stage is brutal. It introduces what is quite possibly the most annoying enemy in this game, the green ships that dive bomb onto the screen and then arc away. They seem to have this uncanny ability to not only shoot at your position, but also shoot at the spot you'll end up while dodging bullets. So many failed attempts were caused by getting caught by their clairvoyance. This is the longest stage by far, and several of the checkpoints are spread out pretty far, which means if you mess up, you have to replay through long and often difficult sections from scratch. There are many sections where relentless and tight barrages of enemy fire rain down on you from the various random enemies, and in general, your ship is very slow, and it has a fairly large hitbox, which is a terrible combination for dodging those type of patterns. When I started this stage, I had a generous stock of extra lives and bombs. By the end of it, it was all gone, and I barely scraped by with my back against the wall. Suffice to say, the bulk of my practice for the one credit clear of this game occurred on this stage. There is one more stage after this, but I like to think of it as a victory lap for surviving stage 5, because you're invincible throughout almost all of it, and the enemies die quickly and don't retaliate. It's not quite time to put the controller down yet though, because there is a final one-to-one duel with the supposed leader of the wild lizards at the end, which is handled in a unique way. You only get one chance at success, and you don't want to screw it up since that leads to the bad ending. You can see how that plays out for me once you watch the replay. So those are my remarks, and on one final note, don't forget to check the description for additional links about the game, which center around the director and oft-thought-of father of Gun Frontier and Metal Black, Takasuna Senba. One link in particular I want to note is a video from Hamster, the stewards of the Arcade Archive releases, which was about their release of the Gun Frontier port. The video itself is 5 hours or so long, and unfortunately I don't read or speak Japanese, so I couldn't tell you what was being said. But I did link to the particular section where Senba-san himself appears as a guest and shares pre-production documents related to the making of Gun Frontier. If you appreciate behind the scenes stuff as much as I do, this is really cool and worth skipping around to look at. By the way, there's a much lesser known third game in this loosely coupled family, the Taito fighting game Dino Rex. We won't be covering this game on the final shot obviously, and frankly, in my opinion, it's not a very good game either, sad to say. That's it for me, so enjoy what's to come, and I'll see you for the next feature.
You